Hello and welcome to lesson 1 video 4. Now that we have installed Leap and make sure that everything works, it's finally time to take a look at the Leap software. So this is the Leap main window in the analysis tab. As you can see here in the main window, we have quite a lot of things going on. So I like to say that we have divided it into a few windows. So here we have a few different things. So here are some of the main areas we can go into. This, which is present in most areas, this is where we have our branches. So this is how the structure of our model looks. Up here, which can be bigger in your versions or smaller, depending, this is where we have our input. It is also where we have some specific results in the results section, but we will get into that later. And here we have some charts. So let's look into the different areas more thoroughly. Here we have the main window in main windows in Leap. Analysis, that's where we have input. That's very important. This is where you will be spending around 90% of your time. I will promise you that. So this is where we can change assumptions, we can make new functions, we can make most things in Leap. Everything we have that is changing in the model other than the basic setup, which we'll do in a minute, 10 minutes, we will do here. Results. This, as implied, is the results, but it is more importantly results on the structure level, which means you can navigate the same branches and then get results instead of inputs. Exactly how that works, I will also cover in a side video where I calculate and show how the results work. Energy balance. Energy balance is a more overview of results. Again, an energy balance. It also contains a Sankey diagram, which, if you don't know how that looks like, it is the energy flow throughout your system. It is very good for reporting, and it has a good overview of how your system looks like in any given year. That's mostly what we use it for. It is also very practical to make sure that your import and export functions work and how the different fields relate to each other. It does take a little bit of practice reading, so that is how we'll go into that in a later video. Summaries, this will not be covered in the course, but it is basically a way of making specified reporting. If you're doing short-term analysis or general statistics updating, this can be very practical. I have found we don't really use that much in practice. Overviews, this is where you can put your custom charts, or rather you can put custom selection of charts and maybe also change parameters. It's quite practical for given situations, but again, I don't feel we use it mostly in practice when we want to do large-scale reporting or similar. The technology database, that is a database for finding technologies as it implies, but especially for emissions. So it does contain some pre-written emission standards for something like vehicles, industrial plants, power plants, and etc. that we can use, which are very practical. Notes, you can write notes throughout the model and they're all collected in here. I don't use it much in effect because if you want to comment on your code or comment on your functions, there are other ways of doing that we will look into. But it does have a nice overview of everything you have done. So if you want to explain things further you have done in your model, you can write that in your notes, and this is where you can go and find these easily. So it's an overview of the notes. All right, good. Let's now look at the top window. So up in top window, we have the main general software menus, like you should see. We have probably already had it in the help section to find out if your scripting part was working. There are a lot of things here that can be used for different things, especially the general and analysis menus will be used in the models quite a lot. As well as we also here have some general functions like making a new model. You will use that very rarely, but it is there. How to open models, save models if you have made changes, email, I have never actually used this. Backup, this is how you make the .leap files, which is very, very practical. Also the settings, this is the model setup. We will get further into that because there are quite a lot of things here. Also the scenario overview. You can now also see the scenarios and the inheritance. So that's a very important method, especially when you get deeper into making different alternative scenarios, because that has the overview, inheritance, and other functions related to scenario. Fuels, this is the fuels window. The fuels window have all the fuels you have in your model and also specific parameters to these fuels. For instance, their carbon content, their energy content, and so on. They can all edit if you have specializations. The Leap does contain a standard database of fuels, which is quite thorough, meaning that crude oil, gasoline of different sorts, biomasses, electricity, and so on is already specified in here. So converting gasoline from liters to gigawatts and so on, that is already gigawatt hours, sorry, is already in here. Effects, that's also like a database for that, but that is for pollutants and CO2. Units, you can also specify your own units. If your country has a special way of calculating and using special units, I have a few models that contains the what is called the total coal equivalents, tons of coal equivalents, sorry, which is a unit mostly used in China. So we have also specified that in our models. We may not calculate with it, but we can always convert to it, which means communication is quite easier. Leap does also come with all of the general SI units like watts related, joules, and everything, and can convert between them. And then this is that is you can click on this button and somewhere in your general Leap window, and it can give you some documentations about this. Rarely used in practice, but good to know about. Then here we have the structure of the model. In this case, I took the standard Fredonia model. So up here we have key assumptions. This is where you have your macroeconomics, demographics assumption, and you can also make, as you can see, folders where you put in specific things. You can always make subfolders to a deeper level, so you can split up your model in different levels. So here, for instance, in the demand, which is the standard folder, you will always have this. It has been split up into something like households, industry, transport, and commercial. And these have further been specified down into, again, in households, it's urban and electrified and refrigerations. These can inherit both from top down and bottom up. So that means you can specify data for instance, households, number of households in your country, or the average energy consumptions per household, or further, that then will be inherited all the way down. But you can also specify not to do that and then have that on a deeper level. And then here we have some technologies. These are specified with some energy efficiency and some workings and which type of fuel they consume. We will get a lot more into that. But these are how you get the overview. And then here we also have, for instance, some effects which are used on the natural gas stove. So you can see we add the effect on the technology itself on an individual level, which is very smart because it does differ quite a lot between the different sectors and subsectors. We will get much more into this, but this is how you get the general overview. You get in the most simplified version, you can have just demand, and in this case also transformation and resources showing, and then using the little pluses and minuses out here, you can then have it to show more. So if I was to click on the plus, we will see more of the rural household area as well, where I only have the urban opened here. In transformation sector, we can see we have the same structure. So we have the general basis of transformation, And then under that, we have specified quite a lot of different transformation sectors. So for instance, here coal mining is the losses and transformation related to getting coal up and probably also transforming it into a coke product or similar. The same thing with oil refining, which is the process of going from crude oil to oil products like gasoline and diesel and fuel oils. These are specified by ourselves, but there are some standards that we can use. Then here down in resources, these are basically the fuels, and these are all the fuels that have been specified in the model. If something is not there, that's because we haven't used it in the model. So that's a general parameter, and that's been split in primary and secondary. These are quite standard, these resources modules, but they have all the parameters related to importing, exporting, and yield and reserves of different fuel. What exactly you can specify depends on the fuel, but again, we will get a lot more into that, I think, in lesson 2. We have the main input windows. Here we have the functions window. This is where we actually write things, and we can see how we specified and what in the different places in the structure. So here you can also see there are different colors to the functions. We will get into why that is. It has something to do with scenarios, but we will have that later in this lesson. A really nice thing about Leap is that when you write something, for instance, here you can see maybe the little arrow. The little arrow outside income, that's because that's where I am physically clicking my mouse at that second. Then you can see I have a specified function for that I've done, and in a specified scale and unit. So here I have a growth. I will explain this function further later on, but it's in thousands of dollars. And Leap immediately show me, even when I do my updating here, that how this actually looks in a visual way. So this, because I am exactly in this place, it also shows me here my growth in a chart of my income, as you can see, the same as up here, as up in the corner, and it is specified in dollars here, but it has converted from the thousands of dollars, but it just shows in dollars because it's simpler in this case. So when you are doing changes, you can immediately see how that will look like, which is very, very practical when you're actually making updates or putting in new functions in your Leap model. Here I just zoomed in. So here you can see that we have, in this case, it's key assumptions. Otherwise, we have tabs up here. These are the different places you can input functions. We'll get to know that later on. And then here, these are all different parameters to my model that is in the same level of my branch that I then can input. And these can be quite different, both in terms of scale. You can see I have both nothing, and then billion, million, thousand, and so on represented. And then also here nothing, I also have percentage, which is so it's 2.5%, for instance, specified here. But then here we also have dollars, people, so population, households, and then again here US dollars, which is a little confusing. That's a bit of an error in the Freedonian model. That should be the same, but that you can use to further work on. And Leap does calculate the units itself or specify units themselves. So if you use this for something down in your demand, it will automatically be energy per people, in this case, if you use your population, for instance. Quite smart. Back to our input visualization window, we can see that's actually not our only option to have our function visualized. So here, and I will get back to these, but these are just for a quick overview. We also have a tabular form, so we can show our tables. That means the actual input data year on year. So if you specify functions, you can also see what that translates to data builder. That is, if you have very long functions, that's a little confusing. You can specify them, or you can see them further here in a window dedicated to just show the function. Here you can write your notes on your functions, and elaborations, that is, if you have linking, you can see where your function links to, and also which function links to other functions linked to your function. We will get further into that. And then of course we have also a help section. Overview of the general Leap input GUI or GUI user interface that we will be working with. I hope that gave you some sense of where we are when we are moving on in other videos to specific places.